What's up, everybody? Ben with the BTC Sessions here, and this is your daily session.
Hodl the Bitcoin.
Before we dive into everything, just a couple quick notes. Number one, do check out my website, btcsessions.ca. This is where you can reach out to me directly and book your own BTC session. We can chat Bitcoin, wallets, proper security, whatever you like. All you need to do is scroll down to the very bottom. There's a contact form for you there. And secondly, big shout out to the sponsors of the show, Ledn.io. This is where you can use your Bitcoin as collateral to secure a Canadian dollar or, in some international markets, US dollar loan. It's really simple. You just go to the website. There's a slider there so you could put in a specific dollar amount and find out how much of a Bitcoin deposit would be required for that. Application takes a couple minutes, and if you're successful, your bank account is typically funded within 24 hours. I've done it myself. Works like a charm, and it's a good solution for people that maybe want to get their hands on dollars, have a sudden expense or whatever, and don't want to sell their Bitcoin to do so because they're worried they're going to miss out on a fluctuation to the upside. So if that interests you, go ahead. There's links down below to check them out. Also, they have a deal on right now where if you sign up for a loan and you're successful, you will get an additional $50 of Bitcoin allocated to your account. But with that, let's dive into the news. So Bitcoin economic activity is now 30% higher than when we were at $20,000, the all-time high in 2017. Now, what does this mean? A lot of time people measure transaction volume on the network, but there's a problem with that because things have changed significantly on the Bitcoin network over the past couple of years. And namely, that has changed with the ways that places like Coinbase and other online exchanges handle transactions. It used to be that when somebody would withdraw money, there would be a single transaction going out to them on the blockchain. But now people have started to realize that given that Bitcoin has limited block space, it's much better to optimize the space used on the blockchain because you can save not only everybody the pain of constantly full blocks, but also you save on fees when you do something called transaction batching. And what this is essentially saying, okay, I have this amount of Bitcoin and I need to pay 200 different people. Well, in a single transaction, I can designate that I have this much going here, and down the list and send that as a single transaction. Sure, it's a large transaction that takes up a fair chunk of space in a block, but it would be far less intensive than sending out all those individual transactions by themselves, saving you on fees, saving block space, making the network more efficient. So rather now than say measuring just those transactions, and what I mean is saying, well, Coinbase sent a transaction out and it had a whole bunch of different outputs. It's actually measuring outputs. So measuring how many different wallet addresses that a single transaction went to. And when you so this is a chart of transactions per day, and it has been steadily increasing. Now you saw a drop earlier in the year here, but more or less the trajectory has been the same for the past year or so. However, as they're saying here, transactions don't paint the full picture because in a single transaction, you could have hundreds of outputs. And so this is a look at outputs. So right now, it looks like over 1 million outputs per day, which is the highest in Bitcoin's history. About on average of 2.8 outputs per confirmed transaction. Despite Bitcoin's price being roughly 70% lower than the high in 2017, the daily outputs is 30% higher than the bull run at $20,000. So there is a lot more economic activity happening on Bitcoin now, which just means it's being utilized more and in a more efficient manner. So I'm going to dive into the next story here. Samsung has invested $2.9 million in the crypto hardware wallet company Ledger. Now, Ledger, I've done videos on the Ledger before, the Ledger Nano S. I tried the Ledger Blue. I have not tried the Ledger Nano X yet, but it's on my list. However, so Samsung has recently done some stuff in the crypto realm, and there's more announcements around them today, but essentially they have already, with the Galaxy S10, had more or less like an internal hardware wallet allocated to it. So it's kind of like a blockchain specific enabled phone that allows you to securely hold crypto assets, we'll say. The way that works is the chipset that actually deals with the storage of those assets is segregated from the rest of the internals of the phone, from anything that actually connects to the internet. Now, how secure is it? I have no idea. I haven't actually had my hands on one, nor do I think it's really been super thoroughly tested yet. I mean, time will tell just in whether people can secure their assets. So we'll see over time. But they probably weren't super excited given that this story is dropping right now, and you have today this from Ledger. Warning, we've detected a malware that locally replaces the Ledger Live desktop application by a malicious one. Users of infected computers are asked to enter their 24-word recovery phrase after a fake update. Please refer to our best security practices. So, not the greatest look. Now, I will say when it comes to this isn't necessarily the fault of Ledger. Really, like this would be somebody has their computer infected by malware. The malware essentially goes in and screws with whatever other software you have on the computer, and that could happen in any instance. The ledger itself is still secure, as secure as it was before this malware existed. The scary thing is that people are mistaking this malware on their computer for the ledger, and the malware is asking them to put in the seed phrase to their device, which, if you've been around for a while, you know that the seed phrase is everything. The seed phrase is your last line of defense. If somebody has that, they more or less have your money. So it's coaxing people into giving up sensitive information that they should never give up in the first place. And Ledger would never ask you to input your phrase to re-access your wallet unless you were starting from scratch and trying to import a seed. But still kind of scary. Now, I don't know what the resolution to this. Now, they've said it's only on Windows. Again, it cannot compromise your device. It's just a phishing attempt. So they're trying to extract information from you. It's unfortunate. Now, this does call to attention that maybe even fully cold storage is a better solution than this. So this is an example of, well, if you're plugging your device into your computer, if you're sharing information like that with the computer, well, maybe not always the best solution. So there are solutions like the Cold Card wallet, where it's fully cold storage, where your device actually never gets plugged into anything at all. You put the transaction together in some software on your computer, you transfer it via SD card to the device, you sign the transaction on the device, and you make sure it's the same transaction that you just did on the computer. If not, the device will tell you, and then you transfer it back via SD card. So it's fully cold storage, air gapped, doesn't touch the computer. So there's always going to be stuff like this where people try to find loopholes and extract sensitive information from you, and people are going to have to be mindful of stuff like that. So scary, but again, not entirely Ledger's fault. It's just not a wonderful look the moment after Samsung has invested $2.9 million. Anyways, let's move on. It's shitcoin news. Ripple reported a 31% increase in the firm's quarterly XRP sales. So what does this mean? Well, I saw a lot of celebration from the XRP army all over Twitter about this. Super stoked that the sales are up for XRP. is this a thing to be celebrated? Essentially, this is saying, hey, inflation is up 31% compared to the previous quarter. That's not a happy thing. And okay, so Ripple Labs holds 60% of all XRP in existence because they created it. Anyways, so they're selling it off in chunks over time. And well, they've sold more recently. Is that a positive thing? Well, you could think of it this way. Imagine if Satoshi was still around, because he's not. Anyways, imagine Satoshi was still around and was an active participant in the Bitcoin market, and he had the ability to buy back or sell his coins at any time. Imagine that Satoshi, being the largest holder of Bitcoin, increased the amount of Bitcoin he was dumping onto the market. Would you be super happy about that? Would you be happy knowing that one of the largest holders of the currency that you're holding is dumping his coins at an increase of 1/3 for this quarter? Would you be excited about that? Food for thought. Let's move on. One last thing I wanted to show you guys today. I really enjoyed this article by Kyle Torpey. He is a contributor at Forbes, but also at Bitcoin Magazine. And he outlines a piece of Bitcoin history that I think is probably one of the most interesting and important bits of Bitcoin history that most people aren't aware of because maybe they were just getting in at the time, and people moving forward will really not understand this. I doubt that any newbies coming in the next few years will really take the time to go back and understand why this is so important. And that is the story of SegWit 2x, the New York Agreement, No 2x, the UASF. If all of that sounds like Greek, let me just briefly explain it, but then I want you to take a look at this article because it is very important. Essentially what happened is you had a number of companies like BitPay and Coinbase and blockchain.info and Shapeshift and a bunch of them, and they were talking about scaling. And now SegWit, an improvement that essentially fixed a malleability bug and also allowed for a block size increase, was already widely discussed and pretty much supported by everybody, and had basically it was not controversial. And so what ended up happening was a company called Bitmain started to not really like the idea of SegWit because, well, I won't dive into that right now. Anyways, Bitmain made some major missteps and have paid for it dearly. They heavily bet on Bitcoin Cash. But anyways, so this spurred on a bunch of conversations and ended, or at least I guess started kind of with something called the New York Agreement, where a number of these CEOs got together behind closed doors, shook hands, and agreed that, okay, we're going to do SegWit, but we're also going to do a 2 megabyte block size increase. And with that block size increase, we're going to fork the code to implement it so that our contributors, our developers are behind the wheel now. Well, the Bitcoin community was not super excited about that. Now, you would think that, basically the largest companies in the entire space would more or less have the control to do whatever they wanted. That's not how it turned out. There was a guy by the name of, a pseudonymous developer called Shallon Fry, and he developed something which was called BIP91, and it was designed to activate SegWit, but it was not designed to activate the 2x fork. And so he just spun this up and he released the code and said, hey, you can run this. And guess what? This is my favorite meme about everything. Who would win? Coinbase, blockchain.info, Circle, Shapeshift, BTC.com, Bitcoin.com, Bitmain, Bitfury, BitPay, Digital Currency Group, Abra, Purse, Zappo, plus 80% of the network hash rate and everyone else who signed the New York Agreement, or a single pseudonymous developer named Shallon Fry. He won. BIP91 activated, SegWit went live, and then when it came time to the end of the year when SegWit 2x was going to activate and they were going to swap over. They had already launched something called futures markets where you could bet on the future value of a coin. And they were betting on whether it would be the legacy Bitcoin network or the fork 2x. What would be the value of each? Well, the 2x fork was only worth about 25% of a regular Bitcoin at the time. And everybody behind the New York agreement backed out 24 hours prior because they realized what a colossal failure it was going to be. And this is why I think this is a very important piece of history, is because in any other cryptocurrency that I've seen to date, the corporations would have won. The leaders, the figureheads, they all would have won. And Bitcoin was the one that was able to stand up and say, no, we're not going to do this. We don't care if you're all of the corporations. We don't care what kind of hash rate you have. We're going to devalue your coin, and this is what we want instead. We want the status quo. We want to stay here on this kind of steady and carefully thought out trajectory that we're on right now. And here we are. So I do encourage you to check out this article. Very, very interesting. Thanks, Kyle, for writing this, and I'll be sure to share it around. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for me today. A couple things you can do. Check out my website. Hit up the sponsor link down below if you want to check out Ledn.io. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, smash the like button, hit the bell icon, because every time this airs for the first time, I am in the side chat chatting everybody up, so make sure you don't miss that. And finally, if you really like what you saw, you can drop me a Bitcoin tip via the Lightning Network on my tippin.me page. If you don't know how, I did make a video about it, and I will link that down below and in the cards as well. But with that, I'm out. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow for your daily session.